So the final segment we've got today is what we're calling the happy hour, where we discuss any other business. I wanted to bring up a favorite DMing tool of mine, and also a favorite thing that happens when I'm a player, and that is the rule of cool. For the uninitiated, the rule of cool is basically, as a DM, your player has done something, or at least described something where it's so sort of outside of the rules, but it's just so awesome that you kind of just want to let it happen. And basically what I want to sort of bring up is our experiences with the rule of cool, both as sort of players and DMs, and times mainly as a DM when some players done something where we've been like, this has to happen, I can't not let it happen. And as players, times when we have expected the rule of cool but kind of been disappointed because your DM is like, yeah, that was cool, but nah, it's too much. What we're going to do is we're going to discuss these different options and just basically figure out our favorite rule of cool moments. Dan, what do you have?
In terms of what like the rule of cool is, like, you kind of nailed it on the head. There's the way I try to rule it, like whether I should be adopting the rule of cool at any given point or not, is if I were watching what was happening in a movie and we're about to have a like Bruce Willis in Die Hard leaping out the 4th story window of an exploding building moment. Is that happening right now? If so, I'm using the rule of cool. Or like, basically the rules are going out the window and it's just gonna happen. Right?
It's like a cutscene.
Like basically, yeah. Have we triggered a cutscene?
Okay.
Yeah, the way I implement it a lot of the time is just by dismissing the rules and just saying, you know what, that sounds incredible. Let's run with it. If we're playing 5th edition D&D, you'll probably get inspiration for it as well, because like if it's a sort of thing where all the other players have gone, yeah, then we're going to rule or call it, right? Because I'm not going to be the one to go, I'll roll a DC 18 check for that. Like, no, just let it happen. It's a fun story, right? You can do that to really make your characters feel amazing. A really kind of celebratory moment. One of my more favourite rule of cool moments, which it was kind of an inversion because I used it for one of my NPCs. During our 4th egg campaign, the party were in this floating Eladrin sky city, hovering over the Feywild. They were specifically going through like a school that had been corrupted by necromancers and the like. They were collecting keys to unlock the doors to the Kronos vaults, which were this massive kind of interdimensional library, because they needed some information on the big bad. As they were ascending this huge, like unfathomably huge golden staircase up to the Kronos vaults, said big bad turned up.
Yep.
And at this point, because we were playing in person and like we used to draw the maps out on a mat, right? Handed the pens out to the players. I had the stairs drawn out and I handed the pens out to the players and I explained to them that these purple lightning bolts were streaking from the sky and striking at the stairs. So I said to the players, feel free, just like doodle cracks and chunks of the stairs getting blown out, and the players were like, yeah, sure, and they just started doodling away, and their models were on the stairs and they were going up, they were taking turns and kind of running up because this big bad was after them, and then they got to the top and they realized the doors were locked, and everyone's taking turns, and then they noticed that as the players were arguing amongst themselves, the big bad was just moving out of sequence every so often, just a few more squares. When the players realised, oh, this big bad isn't obeying the laws of the turn sequence, suddenly everything just became frenetic. And that was one of the more memorable confrontations with a big bad. Separately, again, when we were playing Shadowrun, in terms of a setting, that's pretty daft. And when your Shadowrunners are coming up with all sorts of different explanations and methods and plans, a lot of the time you just have to stop, close your eyes and go, could I imagine this happening in the Matrix? Yes, I could. It works. Yeah, and you just run with it.
But Shadowrun is very cinematic, I find. Yes. in its aesthetic, in the way it plays. It's very, you have a set piece and then you light the fuse and it just goes.
I think it's almost like, the whole joke that if something's got a 1 in a million chance of happening, it's got 100% chance of working. And like, it's those situations that you rule or call it.
So it actually makes me think about a really cool moment for one of my campaigns. It was a Star Wars Edge of the Empire campaign, and the players had got themselves involved in a street race, but of course on Cloud City, so there are no roads on said street races. So they were doing it in those flying little pod cars. And the race had also been equipped, because, you know, it was a criminal underworld thing, with guns. So two of the players were out in the front. They were sort of winning, and unfortunately, a couple of bad rolls meant their ship got taken out of the race and was starting to plummet down into the cloud line. But the player then turned around and was like, Star Wars setting, right? Yeah, of course it is. Just like, well, I pray to the living force. And then whacking on the control panel, and then suddenly just all the lights come back on. And at that point, it was like, I don't need you to roll to repair. I'm going to give you back this many hit points for that. And the ship comes popping up through the clouds and rejoins the race. I think they eventually managed to win it again with some clever maneuvering, but it was one of those moments like, you should be out the race, you should have lost. But just the way they sort of described the falling, the bashing, it was just like, yeah, tell with it, you're back in the race. I don't care. It's just because that's just so cool to imagine.
On the rule of cool, I think might have a slightly controversial opinion. I don't like when the rule of cool interferes with mechanics. So when it's cinematic, I'm all for it. When it's just like a little some spice, and you fly through the air, or you punch this guy and he falls over the table, and he like, all for it. When you use the rule of cool to impact mechanics, for me, I feel like it creates a bit of imbalance. It's like, all right, how many rules of cools did you have versus I had versus they had? And I feel like the rules they're fair, they're even. We keep them fair and even for everyone. So if you start using, I don't think we do in our campaign, but if you use the rule of cool to impact mechanics, I don't like it. That's my personal opinion. I don't know what you guys feel about it.
Like, because the term mechanics obviously encompasses such a wide array of things. What specifically are we talking?
Somebody picks up a weapon and they just automatically crit or destroy something, or I don't know. It's just something that would feel unbalanced. I wouldn't be a big fan of. If the whole group gets it, I'm fine. But if somebody uses the rule of cool, but somehow like keeps using that thing as like a way of kind of not using the rules.
For me, it does have to be a give and take. You know, when it comes to the rule of cool, if there's an expectation for it, yes, that can get a bit dangerous. But if it's something that happens periodically, okay, granted, for a little bit afterwards, your players are probably going to keep trying to grasp for that until they realize they're not going to get it anymore. And then obviously that's when the next one is going to be important again. They get an instant crit.
Or here's an example in a combat. Say somebody wants to do too many things. Like they're like, I want to open the door, touch a magic item, and decapitate this guy, and do this thing.
For me, that's not.
And if the DM goes, yeah, you can do it.
For me,
but
that's not.
It wasn't
cool,
really
though.
cinematic. It was just like the player wanted something special, wanted to do all these things.
It needs to be something truly balls to the wall is probably the best way of for putting it. Like doing something that kind of does break the mechanics, but in such a way that you kind of want to see it happen. So if it's just like, oh, you insta-shot the bad guy, that's not a good reason for a rule of cool. You know, if it's maybe the bad guy has just brought one of your players down to 0 HP, and actually you've been kind of hinting at the fact your character's in a relationship, and suddenly your character runs up in that moment of panic. And if they describe that role play moment well, of this person suddenly possibly seeing the person they fall in love with die, maybe I might let them get that crit in for the next shot no matter what they roll, because they're sort of fitting in with their characters, mechanics and stuff. And if they've explained it or described it in such a way,
and that's why I say it has to be cinematic and not mechanic. Like if somebody's trying to do too many things, or
that doesn't fall into the rule of cool for me. For me, the rule of cool is cinematic. It's something, as Dan said, it's a cutscene.
I feel like it can be subject to interpretation, because like one player might be like, no, but I want to attack these 3 guys and it'll be super cool because I'll decapitate them. And then you go, well, you have 2 attacks.
But that's
like as a DM, I wouldn't be like, yeah, you get a 3rd attack.
Again,
it's not cool enough.
No, that again wouldn't fall into the rule of cool for me. Dan, you look like you want to say something.
Yeah, I was just trying to think of the difference between it, because difference between one person saying, I want to run into the room with 300 people and stab all of them.
And be a badass.
Versus, I want to leap from the burning train onto the back of the dragon as it swoops under the bridge. And it's that moment, that one where the player kind of goes, I want to do something that realistically I'm not going to roll high enough to do.
Yeah.
But I want to do it anyway.
Yeah.
In my mind, that gets rewarded with,
yeah.
Okay, you leap. I might still ask for a roll, and please don't roll a 1. Yeah, that's the sort of thing that you roll a call. You just 100% that happens.
Yeah, where mechanically they wouldn't be able to make the jump, but because it's crazy, they get a shot at it. It could potentially be abused by a player. Is kind of the thing I'm worried about.
100%.
Would be something like if you've got a spell and you've got a bonus action spell, right? Normally, if you have a bonus action spell of first level or higher, your action cannot be a spell. So I would be wary of a DM that would allow that and say, oh yeah, rule cool, you can cast a spiritual weapon and cure wounds. Like, for me, that's just not cool.
Yeah.
All right, maybe it is.
This is what I kind of noticed in a sense. As you said, you're not a big fan of like the rule of cool, but that's also I've noticed between sort of like those sort of descriptions. Sort of when me and Dan talk about it, we're talking about these just big over the top moments. But you really like for you, it's the mechanical sort of side of it. You don't want to break the mechanics side, which again isn't how I see the rule of core anyway. If someone's trying to deliberately break the way the game works by trying to argue rule of core, that's not what I'd use it for.
I think we're on the same page. I'm just arguing rule of cool should be like a high stakes cinematic thing, and not like a casual thing that for like minor actions that might be cool, but realistically I find degrades degrades the rules of the game.
At the same time, it can be quite disheartening for a player who comes up with a unusual out-of-the-box solution to a problem that the DM hadn't considered, only to find that alternative solution bludgeoned to death with mechanics. Stealth, for example. In 5th edition D&D, stealth is let's be honest, it's a bit of a murky area in terms of like how you truly implement it. So like sometimes in those, if it's a case where the DM's assumed, oh, well, clearly you're going to kick the front door down and you're just going to go charging through, chopping everything up. But then one of the players turns around and goes and says, well, actually, if we do this, and this, and we could sneak in through the side and we could, go do this. And like, if that ends up being a more interesting and compelling story, then maybe as the DM or the GM, I wouldn't have every single guard be testing for perception checks versus your stealth check. Yeah, it's that is me using rule of claw to just smother mechanics. Well, you shouldn't be trying to use rule of claw as a mechanic for your character's success, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
you shouldn't be. Yeah, I think Carl, you touched on this earlier. You shouldn't be doing things with the express intention of forcing the games master to give you a rule of claw. Because if you're trying to get it, you're just turning that into a mechanic, and that's not the spirit of rule of claw.
Exactly. I mean, I know I've done that to a DM before. I've had that expectation that I was so sure that my description would be, of how things would go with awe him so that he'd turn around and be like, you know what, hell yeah, let's do it. He was so resistant to the idea that I got caught up in obviously the mechanics then side, because obviously he's like, no, you need to roll this. And I was like, yeah, but come on. I was like, no, roll this. And in my head, I had this big action scene in mind when suddenly that action scene ends up being an absolute damn squib, because suddenly it's like, yeah, I'm gonna do this. Nope, okay, I failed the roll. Uh-oh. And at that point I was challenged because my expectations were a lot higher than the reality. And in the end, the scene turned out fantastic either which way. It didn't turn out how I wanted it to, because I had that rule of cool expectation, and I came across a brick wall because I was assuming that it would happen, and it set a good bar because now I don't overplan the character scenes, because again I know that my DM doesn't want the rule of cool moments. He wants to tell the story, and he wants the mechanics because it challenges us in the mechanics. But yeah, I've definitely been that person who's been like, give me rule of cool, and then been like, what do you mean no? I mean, didn't I just describe that scene amazingly for you? Yeah, it was a great explanation. That's not how it goes though. So
roll acrobatics.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's a good point. I think it depends on each group. It depends on each person. I said I think our group, especially the comic campaign, we tend to play by the rules. But if you're playing a rules light campaign, then you can rule of cool all the way, just all the time, all the way, and have a great time. So it just depends on your playstyle, I guess.
Good question, Dan. Because I honestly can't think of one right now. Has there actually been any rule of cool moments in the Cormier campaign? Has anyone done something where you've sat there and gone? Because I honestly can't think of one. I don't think we've had one, especially not on the YouTube side of things yet. Can you think of any rule of cool moments in
I think it's a bit more subtle. I think it's Dan letting us get away with things we normally shouldn't, maybe.
Yeah, that's the thing. I can't think of any moments.
Like for the benefit of the story, like I think of a few suggestions maybe where.
There was definitely one moment. There was definitely one moment. I just thought about it. Was when I cast the cutting words on the Beast of Malar, which for a save, which I shouldn't have done. I did it in error, but then it carried on. It's only after the session you let me know it's like, actually you shouldn't have done that, but it was just really cool. It ended the fight in a perfect way.
You should?
What do you mean? Cutting words, because I use cutting words on a save, which you're not allowed to do. You can only do cutting words on skill checks and ability checks. I did it on a save by in error, but because it worked out well with the fight, in the sense that Catcher getting into the mind of the beast and figuring out who it was, Dan let it go ahead. So yes, okay, perfect example, I guess. Yeah. But is there any other moments of,
if I let this slide, if I implement rule of cool, will that improve the story? And in that moment, I thought to myself, I think it does. Yeah.
And it did. It really did.
Anton, what was your example? Yeah.
No, I'm just, because I tend to be. I like my rules. Like I tend to be a bit of a rules lawyer.
Really?
Yeah, no, I do. And so I have to be conscious sometimes to like let some things like slide or like talk about it after. And that's also one of the things, is letting people have their moment, even if it doesn't respect the rules fully. That might be, they can cast 2 spells, a bonus and an action, and they can have 3 attacks, or I don't know. But there might be moments like that where maybe if it's cinematic, you let it go.
I mean, I suppose sometimes it doesn't even have to be, in inverted commas, as structured as that. I mean, this is very widely popularized by, for example, Critical Role. The words, how do you want to do this? Realistically, nothing mechanically is changing. Nothing it's all cinematic. Like as a DM, I'm looking at it and going, okay, you've dropped the baddie to 0 hit points. But then just handing the reins to the player and saying, you be the art director, like you be the cinematographer right now. Go. Like you be the stunt coordinator. That's a rule of cool. Because it's something that just makes the players feel awesome.
I'll tell you one area where I think I would like to see more rule of cool is probably going to be with cantrips, and specifically the non-damaging ones.
Prestidigitation, Druidcraft,
Prestidigitation, gust of wind, thaumaturgy. Like if you have Druidcraft and you want to make a whole tree, okay, do it. You know, that's like, normally you're only supposed to like make a plant. If for some reason in the story you want to make a tree, make a tree with it, you know, or gust of wind if you want to turn a windmill with it, or you know, if it's especially if it's an RP moment, like that cantrip can just become way more powerful. because you should have that power with you, even though you might not have the spell slot, or
9th level cantrip.
yeah, and maybe you ask your player to build to waste a spell slot, saying, okay, you want to have that effect, but okay, burn a spell slot and you can pump up that cantrip.
Sure. Yeah.
I think that's a cool rule of cool moment that could maybe be used.
So in summary, the rule of cool is
hate it. Really hate it.
It's a cutscene. At the best to describe it, it can be anything for anyone. Like as they said, we've got 3 different ideas of what the rule of cool is. 2 that kind of match slightly, 1 that maybe doesn't. But the idea is,
I'm there with you. I think we all agree.
But it's just basically something that makes the player's life
more exciting
and gives them that heroic moment, I think, which comes back to something we mentioned in one of the previous segments. When you design a compelling character, is because you want to end up being heroic. And I think with the rule of cool, it's that it gives you that hero's moment. And I think that's why, as a DM, I particularly love it. Because
as a DM, celebrating your players' victories.
Yeah,
being their ally.
I just like being a Scrooge.
Oh, and that bell. That was for last orders. So we'll be closing the tavern soon. Thank you for listening and sticking with us. And we look forward to do this month in, month out, and have these conversations about D&D.
Yeah, should be a good time.
Yeah, hopefully so. I mean, I definitely enjoyed this one, and I look forward to doing more in future. If you want more information about the Tavern Between Dimensions, you can follow us on our socials. You can follow us at Tavern Between. We'll put a link down below for you to have a look at, but that's at Tavern Between, and you can find that on Twitter and Instagram.
So you can find me at DMT over on Instagram, and in terms of Twitter, you can also find me at DMDanT. That'll also be down below.
I don't do the internet, so we'll just have to message Dan and get the message to him.
And if you want to follow me personally, I'm at Group Stormbear. That's group with 2 O's, GROOP Stormbear, all one word. And that's again Twitter and Instagram. So the tavern is now closing. Please respect our neighbours as you leave, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Beware of the trolls.
They have been a nuisance recently. Bye, guys. Thank you.
See you later.
Yeah.